Oh, hello, David. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your journey in choosing a roof lantern blind with our other customers. I'm sure it'll prove really useful to them.
Brilliant. Delighted to. Very happy to.
Oh, thanks, David. And can you tell us, you've got this great space. Can you tell us what were the issues that made you contemplate getting a blind?
Well, clearly, probably even before the heat of the summer we've just had, the room, which is a lovely space, we have a roof lantern, which clearly obviously lets in a vast amount of light, but we had it replaced about a year ago. And in order to prevent some of the glare of the sun and the heat, so the glass that was put in it was effectively to reflect some of that heat on that basis, but unfortunately, it didn't reflect all of it. So we found ourselves in a space that found too much light at the wrong times of the day, lots of glare, and also some extreme heat as well too. So actually the product that we had on the glass to reflect it wasn't quite appropriate for our needs. So therefore we started to explore alternative options in terms of how we would obviously, take away some of those challenges.
Yeah, and David, can you tell us about those options you looked at?
Well, certainly, yeah. I mean, so we looked at, clearly, blinds just in order to be able to do that, and of course, considered effectively, kind of various options, either mechanized or not. Considered, other local suppliers potentially that might be able to help us with some of those options, and frankly, we really struggled until we found WindowTreat to actually find a solution that we felt was probably really appropriate. To come to, I suppose, three things we were looking for. One was to reduce the glare that we were having in the room during the day. Sun rises at the back of the house and can be very bright, so much so that it's difficult to watch television. And of course, in the heat, when it's really warm, even though there are vents in the lantern, the amount of heat that's contained within the room, it became a little bit unbearable to sit in, and it is a lovely space looking out onto the garden. And of course, we're considering, of course, during the winter, because we had, clearly with the winter time, because it's glass, it does expel some of the heat from the room. We're constantly, obviously, having to turn up the radiators and the thermostat in order to keep that space reasonably warm. So those are the sort of three things that we were looking for. And it was actually when we looked at some of the customer testimonials, etc., when we discovered WindowTreat, we kind of felt it was appropriate to give you guys a call.
Yeah, and then you met Chris, of course, who's our electric roof lantern blind specialist. And
Yes.
Can you describe the journey? Others won't have seen that, been on that journey with Chris. Well, what's it like?
Well, first of all, it was extremely knowledgeable. You're absolutely right. What an expert. And of course, very much like we're doing now. There was an opportunity really just to kind of meet online, to kind of share with him what our issues were, and then of course for him to kind of demonstrate some of the potential solutions. And that was a combination of things, not just in terms of having a blind, because it is, the ceilings are quite tall here, so it's quite high up. So rather than saying manual, it really kind of called out for some sort of, as I say, a mechanized approach for that. But also just in terms of some of the fabrics. And I suppose that for us, we just assumed maybe it was a standard blind that you maybe put up a roller blind or whatever in your bedroom. But there were really quite a number of options that would be getting the, I suppose the technical bit, which was great, really explained very well, is getting the balance between letting enough natural light in, keeping the heat out, and also again in the winter to keep heat in, because we really wanted to not put blackout blinds in that space, because we still want to have a certain amount of natural light coming through, and of course that's what that was part of the presentation, to really explain all those different options in the fabrics, and it was great not only to hear that explanation, but then to get the fabric samples as well, in order for us to touch and feel them and actually stand in the room and hold them up to the light itself, because then it really gives you that realism, rather than necessarily kind of, Steve talking about it in the way that he was trying to explain it. So that was really, really helpful.
Yeah, and you went for a fabric, white fabric facing inwards, but magic is on the outside,
Yeah,
external face where it's metallized, and rejects more heat than any other fabrics that we have. of the solar energy. So I guess before we come on to whether it's worked, let's describe you met our installers or some of our installers on the day of the install.
Yeah.
What was your experience with that? Was there anything that sort of jumped out at you compared with your expectations beforehand?
Well, I mean, to be fair, when I look at it now, it kind of looks something that would be fairly easy to put up. But of course, I had to get my electrician beforehand to make sure I got the power in the right place in order to connect. And once all of that was done, it was really quite easy. I mean, frankly, the chaps were here probably a couple of hours at most, to be fair, and it was completely fitted, demonstrated it working, and sealed all the way around. I mean, they're very clean, tidy, very knowledgeable, and frankly, I have to say, it looks like it's been actually there forever. I mean, it just feels part of that space that actually, when this extension was made, it's probably the one part that they forgot to install. And it actually feels complete now, to be honest with you. It's such a, I would say the remote is literally that size, which is great. And it's just so easy to operate. But the chaps that installed it were fantastic. Neat, clean, tidy, very knowledgeable. And to be fair, I have had a number of builders over the years, without question, clean, tidy, some sort of magic Hoover, because there's no dust afterwards, which is even better.
Well, it's lovely to hear. And you talked about glare, you talked about heat loss, which is going to be very important now with the energy prices spiraling like they are, and also heat gain. Now, you had your install, I think, at the beginning of September. So can you describe the three? Has it worked out? Is it doing the job you paid for?
Well, certainly. I mean, clearly, sort of the back end of September, the sun still rises at the back of our garden and cuts through the lantern. With the blind closed in the morning, and sit and have a cup of coffee and in the morning and watch TV without the glare coming onto the screen, which is fantastic. So straight away, you can feel, you can see the difference really in terms of that basis. We haven't had the intense heat clearly that we had during the summer. But of course, certainly now as it's starting to get a little bit colder, and there's a few nights last week where with this room I would definitely have had to put the heat on. Because the blind is closed and the way that actually it's sealed all the way around, the heat isn't escaping through the glass in the way that it would have done without the blind in place. So you can already feel a noticeable difference. And I'm, not that I'm looking forward to testing it maybe in December and January when it's really cold, but I kind of, based on my experience so far, I think it's going to do exactly what we wanted it to do in terms of reflecting that heat in the summertime and also retaining the heat in this room. Room has a lot of glass. I think basically based on the size of the room, because of the back doors and the lantern, really basically about 30 or 40% of the space here is glass that lets light in and of course heat out. But I think with the lantern now obviously installed with the blind, I'm really hopeful that will retain much more heat in this room.
That's great news. And based on our experience, we're very confident that you'll love the results. I've got one more question for you, David.
Of course.
$1 million question, and that is, would you recommend WindowTreat to friends and family?
Absolutely, without question. I think we've got a great product. I think actually just in terms of the technical expertise, the know-how, and actually being able to explain and demonstrate for us. I think we've got pretty unique fabric, on that roof, or that metallized that piece. And of course, it's just a fabulous job in the end, and we're delighted with it. So thank you.
That's music to my ears. Thank you very much, David.
Pleasure. Go.
Can I be cheeky and just ask you? You've got the remote next to you. If we pan up, would we be able to just open and shut the blind? Do you think, or shut and open the blind?
How's that?
Yeah, lovely.
How's that then? So if I do that. See, I thought I'd sit here because it'd be a bit easier.